Everyone. I'm Will Rosenzweig, your host at FoodBiz Plus, our monthly conversation with remarkable food entrepreneurs. And I am just so thrilled this week to have a dear friend and colleague, Kristin Richmond, the co-founder and CEO of Revolution Foods, with us today. And we're going to talk a bit about how an idea becomes a business, Kristin. And I'd like to also concentrate a little bit today on scaling up, because so many of our colleagues, students are interested in what the challenges are. And since you've now had an amazing run for 10 years of going from a classroom project to the country's leading purveyor of healthy meals for families and school children, it's been a remarkable journey, and we'll get a chance to share that. I'm just going to share a couple of notes with the audience here right before we get started. I'm really delighted. If you look at this first slide too, I think you can see that on your screen. You can see a picture of Kristin and her partner, co-founder Kirsten Tobey, and I'm also just really grateful to the two of them for being kind of founding members of FBS and the vision that we have been bringing forth. So as I mentioned, the Food Business School is the new Center for Executive and Graduate Education at the Culinary Institute of America. The CIA is based in Hyde Park, New York, with its main campus, and has a campus in San Antonio, where Kristin is from, and also two campuses in California, one up in St. Helena, Greystone, a very famous estate, and then our newest facility at Copia, which is the American Center for Wine, Food, and the Arts, and which just opened in the last month or so. We have different programs at every campus, including bachelor's degrees and associate's degrees, and FBS is our effort to bring entrepreneurship and innovation education and make it accessible and good to use. And again, here's another picture of Chris that we use to reinforce our mission. But our mission at the FBS is to enable and empower our students to design, deliver, and lead transformative innovations that address the world's most pressing food systems challenges and its greatest business opportunities. And I have to say that really the experience of having a front row seat at watching Revolution Foods have the kind of grow and come into being and grow and have the kind of impact that it has is really a great inspiration to me for the Food Business School. So without further ado, I want to introduce Kristin Richmond. And just to start, for those people that are watching today that don't know what Revolution Foods is, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about the company and what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. Thank you, Will, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. I hope everybody on the line, if you don't know, the business school plan that Will was referring to was actually in his class. He was my professor at the time, so we go way back, and we certainly wouldn't be here without your just mentorship every step of the way. So it's a pretty special chance to be presenting with you tonight. Great to talk to everybody tonight. And a little background on Revolution Foods. We started in 2006, pretty hard to believe, but we started with a vision of dramatically improving access to healthy, affordable, delicious meals for families. My co-founder and I had both come from education and seen firsthand the impact of pretty terrible food being served in schools on student learning and student health outcomes. We had seen it in classrooms, we'd seen it outside of the classroom, we'd seen the impact on engagement, attention, ability to succeed and perform well. And we both thought that it was a great nutritious food was just a tremendous lever to set students up for success. So originally we started in the school sector. We kicked off serving charter schools. And a couple key things to know about us. We've always been focused on access. So we've always believed that Revolution Foods is here to serve all kids and all families. And so, to this day, we've had a very, very strong focus on creating access to healthy food in our most underserved communities. We saw a big opportunity for impact. Today we serve breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper in over 1,500 schools across the United States in 30 cities, 2.5 million meals per week. So huge opportunity for impacting students and health. We also saw a huge business opportunity. It's a $20 billion market that we are tackling, and we saw the chance to literally reinvent business in this segment. And so we, Will knows, went after it with everything we had, and have been very successful in scaling. A lot of challenges along the way, of course, in growing a business, especially in an innovative sort of systems changing business, which I can talk more about. The other thing to know about us is about 3 years ago, we were getting feedback from both leading retailers like Whole Foods and Safeway, as well as parents in our schools, that they wanted to bring Revolution Foods home to their families. They, trusted our food. They knew that their kids loved our food, and they said, why can't we have this outside of the school day? So we expanded our reach to start a retail healthy family food line. And we're so excited about that expansion. It's a younger part of our business, but we're in 4,500 grocery stores across the country. And we feel like we're solving big nutrition challenges for families in school, at home, at the grocery store, on the go. So it's an exciting place to be as we build out that promise of being the leading provider of healthy family meals in the U.S.
So take us back to just the days when you were dreaming this up. You mentioned that both you and Kirsten, your co-founder, came from education, so you had some familiarity with that sector. What was your food experience like at that point? How sophisticated were you, or knowledgeable were you about food? And just talk to us a little bit about how you decided to start and kind of test your
Will,
hypothesis.
I'm losing you.
Really? Can you hear me?
Will, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me? No.
Can anyone hear me online now?
I can hear you. I can. Can you see me?
Hello?
Let's see if I can check in with Mission.
Let's see. Can anyone hear me, or am I coming in and out here?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me? Everybody says they can hear both of us.
Will, I can hear you now, but okay, you cut out of me right after you said take me back to when we were dreaming about the business, and then I lost you. I'm sorry.
Okay, we had some technical excuses there. So I was just saying, take us back to the early days when you were formulating the solution. You saw the problem because you came from education. You hadn't really you weren't a parent yet. You were a student still. So you were sort of looking at this as a need, an unmet need. Talk to us about how you guys thought about where to start. You see a problem, you see that kids are getting served hot dogs and pizza and chicken nuggets and all kinds of stuff that's not so good for them at school. And because of your educational background, you knew that, or your background in education, you knew that kids who eat food like that aren't going to get set up to be, awake, attentive, necessarily perform well. They may be more susceptible to get diabetes or obesity. But so you have that idea, and you have good intention, and you're going to business school. You want to make a difference in the world. How do you think about starting? Where to start?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I remember I remember it like it was yesterday. So, the first thing we did was we really, I think, went into it with a big vision, but in a pretty humble way, in the sense that we wanted to listen and learn as much as we possibly could. It was really important that we got out to schools who were going to be, our partners and our customers, and listen. I mean, we had our vision of what we had seen. We had a pretty good hunch that there was a huge issue and lack of quality in schools when it came to food. But we really wanted to listen and learn, because it's not as simple as saying, food's not working for students, there's junk food being served. You have to understand how to make the situation better. And so the first thing we did was to run pretty in-depth focus groups. And I mean, we weren't professional focus groupers. We had no technical marketing background, but we went in and we sat down with students. We were very fortunate to have great school leader connections, and they were all interested in this idea, which was a good indicator. But they had us sit down with groups of students, and we would interview students on what they liked about their food, what wasn't working for them, what they would love to see. We learned that, when people say things like, "Well, this Revolution Foods will never work because kids love junk food," when you actually listen to students and hear what they have to say about the food being served to them in school, you find that that's really not the case at all. 9 times out of 10, they're saying, "You know what? This food is awful. Like, it's not respectful to me. It's not delicious. It's certainly not healthy. If you serve me something that looked great, tasted great, smelled great, reminded me of, what my grandma serves every once in a while, so that it's culturally relevant, I'd be very, very likely to try it." And so we really listened and learned. And then we actually, this may be a whole separate topic, but something I advocate for so strongly with entrepreneurs, we ran a pilot, which was absolutely critical in our scoping of a successful business plan. And I can talk more about that, Will, but I'll wait for a minute.
Let's talk about, one thing that I just wanted to underscore was you had mentioned that you had contacts who were school leaders, and I just wanted to kind of underline how important that little bridge was for you to get access, because those people believed that even though you didn't have any experience necessarily making that kind of food, you knew you could get to a point where you could talk to the people who would be your customers, both the school leadership and the kids themselves. So that, I think, insight was really key at the beginning. So then how did you think about a pilot and sizing it, selling it in? How did you do that?
Well, so we found a sort of early adopter, and in our case, it was a school called Lighthouse Community Charter School. The leadership really believed in this idea and allowed us to run a multi-week pilot with students. And what that meant was that we get to take all that great focus group learning around what students wanted to see in their meals and actually create prototypes and serve them. And so then, we had to figure out, how do we produce this food? Because we weren't chefs and we didn't have a commercial kitchen. And so we had to actually produce the food in a food safe, high quality way that reflected the standards that we wanted to serve our students, because that was incredibly important to us. We've had the same real food standards since the day we started. So we actually then utilized our great business school status and found, I believe you introduced us to him, Will, Walter Robb from Whole Foods, who at the time, helped us connect to the Northern California leader. And we went in with our little pitch deck and we said, John Clower, we would love to run this pilot. We believe there is a huge opportunity in schools and that Whole Foods could be a real values-driven mission partner in this. He said, "I think you're right. I know you're right. How do I help you set this up?" So he set us up with a store, I think it was the San Ramon store, that helped us actually produce these menus that students had asked for with really high food standards. We were able to go in, serve the meals, basically build more student feedback from the meals. We invited parents in to comment on the meals. And then eventually we had our prospective investors come and watch this pilot service. And to this day, Mike Dorsey, again, who I met through Will and we're good friends with, says that experience of watching us actually serve the meals, even though it was only 30 or 40 students, really sealed the investment for him in terms of seeing the program in action.
sounds like magic. It even you make it sound a little bit easy, but talk a little bit about the backdrop of all of this, which I think people will appreciate, is the cost structure of actually
Hmm.
doing this in a school. Why don't you explain a little bit about the cost structure in schools and school reimbursement and just the constraints and challenges that exist in the
Yeah,
system.
there are so many challenges, and if I mentioned one sort of naysayer comment around, students will never eat this food, the other, because it's too healthy, the other comment, that we always received as aspiring entrepreneurs was, this is way too expensive. There's no way you can serve this level of quality to students, specifically in low income communities. And so again, we pressure tested that. We said, okay, and this is where I did have prior to education, a banking background, and built my financial model from step one. Very simple assumptions. I always tell entrepreneurs, run a pilot, build a financial model, because you do need to really understand the financial tracking and journey that you're going to be on. And of course, those assumptions will change, but you need to have a really good feel for, in our case, what it looked like to incorporate clean label, all natural product standards, what it looked like to add in the labor to create those meals, what it looked like to add in the distribution and the delivery of those meals. And then, of course, the overhead below that, what would be needed to support the program beyond those direct costs. But we went in, we looked at, I had, again, worked at in education and seen, so I knew how school budgets worked, was able to kind of understand pretty quickly that schools relied on the National School Lunch Program. There was a certain reimbursement structure associated with that. We needed to be as close to break even with that reimbursement standard as we could be. Truth be told, we couldn't get there in the beginning. We were not able to, and this will happen when you're starting up a company. Your cost structure on day one will not be what your cost structure is when you're serving 2.5 million meals a week. So understanding that journey, you have two options. You can either, if you have, a great deal of investment and you can afford to sort of loss lead in the beginning, that's one option. We did not have that kind of investment. We needed to find folks who could pay a little higher price to start. So we could get our feet on the ground, get a model stabilized, and then once we were able to sign up 3 or 4 schools that could pay a slightly higher price than reimbursement rate, due to private fundraising that they've been doing, et cetera. These were still inner city Oakland schools. Then we were able to really start experiencing that move towards economy of scale. And of course, that's been a journey of 10 years, is really driving that economy of scale so that you can have an incredibly high quality offering, but at a lower price as you grow. And one of the benefits of being in a high growth business or industry is you'll see that economy of scale hit faster because you have a lot of volume to offer and hopefully a great brand that suppliers want to be a part of, which we experienced throughout time. We had a kind of unfair competitive advantage in that way. We created that unfair competitive advantage because we had a great mission and we stayed true to that mission, and it made folks like Stonyfield Farms, Whole Foods, folks who may not ever have been would have chosen to work with a tiny little startup, certainly where they were not making money. They chose to work with us because they believed in the mission and the brand, and sure enough, we're their partners 11 years later.
That's fantastic. So I want to go back and just sort of dissect a few things you said. So you started with this hypothesis, then you developed a pilot, then you mentioned that you were able to find several early adopter customers, and for lack of
Mm-hmm.
a better word, let's call them premium customers, because it's not
Mm-hmm.
unheard of in the food industry that products start out in a premium or super premium category. Even a company like you mentioned, Whole Foods, when it started, seemed to be very exclusive. It still is to some extent, but what happens is these companies find their early adopter customer, and then they improve their economics and they get pricing that can become more broadly
Right.
available. So that was a strategy, and you focused in on charter schools where you got buy-in from the leadership of the school, the parents in the school, and the kids in the school. So it's really interesting. You almost have three, decision makers. And one
Yeah.
of the things for me that I remember so vividly was that a lot of the people that were, you know, early skeptics of Revolution Foods, like, are they really going to be able to be successful? Were concerned that, it sounds great, healthy food, good food sounds good, but are the kids really going to eat it? Because as it turned out, your business model hinged in many of those schools on whether the kids actually ordered the meal or ate the meal. So
That's
it
right.
all sounds good, but you deliver it, and if it gets thrown away and the kid doesn't order it the next day, or the school doesn't order it the next day, you've lost a customer. And
That's
so I
right.
think the really powerful thing for me was to see that you were making food that these kids would eat. And then that was the kernel of really the food systems change and the innovation, because all of a sudden you were tapping into something that's really profound. And there's been a lot of social science research on this, but it turns out that children who start eating better actually influence their siblings and in many cases their parents to eat better. So
Right.
one of the really amazing things to me was you go into this school, you change this one child's experience with food, and not only are you serving them the food, but you're providing kind of an educational context. You're helping them understand where the food comes from and how it's prepared and what its nutritional
Right.
value is and why it's good for them. And then all of a sudden, they become your advocates,
Yeah.
and they became your best salespeople. So
That's
that to
right.
me, I would call that from a, I'd call that a value creation milestone. You actually showed that your customers, the people who have to eat your food every day, loved it, and that they would come back. So they became repeat customers. So I just wanted to kind of, shape that, because the whole story of, like, thesis, pilot, getting the first customers, that's all great. But can you do it and keep them engaged? And do they come
That's
back
right.
next semester?
That's right. And I mean, now as moms, Will, you mentioned I have two little boys. Kirsten has three little girls. So we've had, five little kids between the two of us in the last decade. And you see it as a mom, it's clear as day. But we knew through our touch with schools and students and really listening that, healthy is so important, but if students aren't loving the food, then it's not going to have the impact that you want it to have, because they're still going to be hungry. And in many cases, our students weren't. They were undernourished due to sort of lack of quality calorie content versus lack of calories, period. So in many ways, our students were, suffering from malnutrition because of eating too much of the wrong food. And then we came in and, were able to provide something that was wholesome, but really, really important to listen to student feedback and design through the eyes of our school partners. And we've
Well,
taken that very, very seriously.
let's take that and let's fast forward a little bit, because you built this really great enthusiastic following in the Bay Area in your backyard. I mean, again, I think
Mhm.
it's important for people to note that you need to be in an environment where people are, receptive, and you were able to
That's
recruit and
right.
attract really amazing people at the beginning. You've always had an amazing team, um, very female-centric leadership team from the very day. I mean, very diverse and balanced, but women-led business. I mean, it's been incredible to watch.
Yeah.
But you started in these charter schools, as you mentioned, where you could get people to pay a little bit more. But then you started to think, like, okay, as you mentioned, it's a gigantic market. How many $1 billion did you say the school meal market is?
It's about a $20 billion market.
A year. $20 billion is spent on
Yeah.
school lunches alone a year. So that's a big market. So you start a few years later, after you've got this charter school kind of cohort going, you start knocking on the doors of these big public school districts. And they're like interested, but they're also a little bit skeptical. Like, can this little company
Yep.
in Oakland, California serve us? And
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
if they blow it? What if the food doesn't show up? And so
Mm-hmm.
talk to us about that chapter. Like, how do you convince people? And then, well, not only was you had to convince people, but you also had the issues of these contracts are at that size. Once you get into that that public school environment, these contracts can become a bit political in nature too.
Yep.
There's a lot of things going on. So help us understand that kind of selling process and how you,
Yeah.
what resources or what talents did you have to bring into the company? Here's the question. How did you build the company, your team and your capabilities to be prepared for that opportunity and then ultimately convince those big customers? And tell us about that experience of landing those big public school districts.
Yeah. It was a big growing up process for us. So we, as you said, started in the charter school market. The other reason the charter school market was so attractive to us is that it, tends to be a little more innovative, tends to do it on a sales cycle level. Leaders have a lot of autonomy to make quick decisions. So the sell-in cycle is so much shorter. You're talking about 4 to 6 months versus 6 months to 18 months in a large district. So it's a much, much different sell-in cycle, obviously smaller accounts. But we really did hit a wall when we first started trying to get into districts. You sort of mentioned some of the items. I mean, first of all, you have to be careful. You both have to be in an environment that is receptive to an innovative, progressive model. So for us, Northern California was a great place to start, but I'll never in my life forget my first trip to DC when I sat in front of, a food service director in DC, and they just took one look at us and said, this is a California, crunchy company, and you guys need to show that you can operate on the East Coast or get out of my office. And I remember, trying not to get too disappointed because we needed to break in. So we knew we needed to expand. We wanted to scale pretty dramatically the whole time. That's the other thing, is we knew we wanted to scale to impact as many kids as possible. And that was another true north for us. So it was access, it was, beautiful, fresh, clean ingredients, and it was scale, commitment to scale, because for us, that means impact. So we knew we needed to break sort of out of that California market to demonstrate proof of concept. So we expanded probably earlier to DC and Colorado than one might recommend. It was quite aggressive. I can talk about that. That's a whole other story of what it feels like to, fail during a launch in some senses on part of it, scaling too fast on part of it. But I think in general, we were able to, in DC, really surround the school district with an incredible charter school presence. And then what happened was, parents are starting to say, well, wait a minute, the school across the street has access to this incredibly healthy food. What about our students? So there started being pressure from the outside, from the external community, saying there's this little company called Revolution Foods, but you know what? They're doing some volume and they are making waves and their quality's great. And I'm hearing rave things about them, which then sort of enabled us to get the meetings that we needed on the inside of larger districts to have those conversations. It was so important that we had an operational track record and that we were of a certain size. It was almost like for us, getting to a certain size where we could talk about how quickly we could launch successfully when given a contract. Folks at larger districts always want to know, is it a 4-week launch? Is it a 6-week launch? Is it a 3-month launch? How much lead time do you have? Give us examples of how you've launched successfully. So we did get to a point where we had those operational chops. The other thing that we needed to do was become affordable enough to work with large systems. And that really came through, again, this idea of economies of scale and optimization of the model. So what is like the great part of this story is that when we started, we had this commitment to, a full clean label supply chain. There had never been there is not a company in K-12 that is nationally scaled with a clean label supply chain, exclusively clean label. And so it was really tough and a slog and expensive to build the supply chain. But the great thing is once it started coming together, once a district wanted that level of quality for their kids, we were uniquely positioned to provide it in actually a very affordable way. So there was a pricing ability, Will, that we got to where we could meet an affordability factor. There was a sort of an operational chops piece of this, and there was a demand from the external side saying, you got to give these guys a chance. Like they're doing this, there's, they're getting great reviews, give them a chance.
Chris, just for clarity, explain what you mean by a clean label.
Oh, so I mean, very, very simply for us, we have always been committed to real, no artificial anything food. So no high fructose corn syrup, no added colors, no added flavors, just no artificial anything, real food every step of the way. And we're organic where we can be, we're seasonal where we can be, we're local where we can be. So we incorporate those key parts of the supply chain where we can be, but nothing. There's no artificial anything in our meals.
So talk a little bit about the infrastructure. What's the organizational infrastructure that you need to do this? Because these are all fresh prepared meals every day. Take us through, like, what's a day in the life of a Revolution Foods kitchen, and going from that pilot where you actually kind of outsource the food to your rental kitchen where you started to your own facility. Take us through that journey a little bit too.
Well,
now,
so when we
are there now? Are there 15 or there's?
Well, no, we have 7 altogether, and we've got facilities in California, Texas, Colorado, New Jersey, DC, Louisiana. So we've got a nice spread across the country. So it's, in our world today, a day in the life would be our facilities. I'll use Northern California across the street from me now. We're pretty much 24 hours in our shift. I'll talk a little bit about job creation in a minute because it's one of the things we're most proud of here. But we run almost a 24-hour shift where we have fresh food, fresh ingredients coming in the door, whether that's broccoli, peaches, cheese, dairy, you name it, it's coming in the door. And then we are cooking and assembling fresh meals at essentially almost all hours of the day. And then we are chilling those meals. We're refrigerating and staging them to send out to schools. And then we are distributing those meals out within a 10-hour radius of our facilities. So we have quite a broad reach. So you had a truck today leaving Oakland, going to San Francisco, San Jose, Fresno, Sonoma, all over the place. So we've got a really big reach in terms of where we can distribute our meals from that fresh food facility. And then we've got a whole other team of folks who are working with our schools, menu planning with our schools. We're driving food innovation with our schools. So one of the best things we do, I just looked at a video of a jambalaya design today where we were innovating on our jambalaya recipe in Louisiana, and hopefully making it better and better as we iterated with our students. So we have product development going on. We have nutrition education going on, and we have the service of all 4 day parts going on at our schools every day.
One of my favorite memories when you were scaling up the Northern California facility was you brought in a whole group of students from your local schools and had an Iron Chef competition and actually engaged the kids in designing the meals. And what have you learned from that as a way of, again, gaining competitive advantage?
Oh, I mean, we learn every day from our students. I mean, we've had very humbling experiences where, we'll be serving a certain community and, we'll use a cheddar cheese and students will just tell you right off the bat, our community doesn't eat eat yellow cheese. Like, get it right. We eat white cheese, and here are the types of cheese that we love. And, it's everything from, launching in Colorado and realizing we had to have an amazing salsa verde to launching in Louisiana and realizing that our red beans and rice absolutely had to have a certain type of red bean. And if we didn't get that red bean right, we would simply not be accepted. And so understanding, all the way to one of my favorite stories, which is in San Francisco, right here, we had students in Chinatown who came to us and said, you know what, you guys, we love your food, but you do not have a culturally relevant breakfast menu for our community in Chinatown. So, get with the program. Like, we need some innovation here. So we went out with our team of chefs and worked in a school in Chinatown with the principal, at Gordon Lau, with the principal, with the students, and with our design chefs, and created an entire line of breakfast rice bowls, which are just delicious. And actually, the students named them Sunshine Bowls. And so those have become available throughout the country, created, in our backyard here in Chinatown. So that constant process of iteration and learning is super, super important.
So you're taking this from a recipe, purchasing all these ingredients, and ingredients that are regionally and culturally relevant. So you're in these, I think I said you have 7 culinary centers, but like 15 major markets, right? Or even more than
Oh,
that.
we serve 30 major metro areas, so 30 big cities in the US out of these 7 culinary centers.
So, and you go all the way from cooking the meals, staging the meals, and then you deliver them. Also, you have a whole fleet of trucks that say Revolution Foods
That's
on the
right.
side, and they go out to the schools, and then you work with the schools in a variety of capacities, either getting that food directly to the kids or working with the school's own, food organization. You've innovated in that way too, which is really fascinating. And so let's change gears just a second. That's kind of behind the scenes with the preparation. Let's talk about this journey of having partners. You talked about your first strategic partner being Whole Foods, and then you talked about some of the other manufacturers of kind of like-minded products and companies. What about capital? How did you
Oh,
how did you do that, and how important is your job? You're the CEO. Talk a little bit about what that's like to raise capital, how it's changed over the last 10 years, and what percentage of your time is actually spent attending to the capital needs of the company. And maybe put in context, is this a really capital efficient, is this like a software company, or does this take like a lot of money to,
this takes a lot of money to run, and it's a it, I think capital intensive would be the category we would fall into. um, so even though we work hard every day to streamline the capital needs for the company, and we're getting I think much more efficient as we grow, but it's a capital intensive company. And as a young entrepreneur, Kier and I, neither one of us had kind of individual wealth or the ability to fund our own company out of the gate. So we knew right off the bat that we needed to raise a significant amount of money to get the company off the ground. And that for us made a lot of sense, because again, we were focused on scaling as quickly and as thoughtfully as possible. So we've now raised about $135 million. And I'm in the process of another fundraising round. I'm in the middle of an equity and a debt fundraising round. So I one of the real expertises I've developed is fundraising over time. I actually really enjoy it and love it. I think it's connects you to incredible folks across the board. And as as all the aspiring entrepreneurs on this call think about how you would finance your idea, there are a lot of different routes you can go. For us, the good news, let me tell you the good news, which is that in the last decade, the sources of capital for, in my case, a values-driven food business and impact business have expanded truly exponentially. So you have, a classic market, folks like Bain Capital and TPG, who are now launching impact funds, wanting to invest in companies like Revolution Foods. Then you have family offices, very wealthy individuals who've kind of brought their money into a family office and said, we want to invest in values-based companies that really align with our values. So you have family offices that have come to play in a major way in this space. Then you have foundations who, traditionally made grants, and now they are actually investing equity capital in for-profit social ventures. And so there's this huge spectrum of investment possibility. And then depending on your model, you may be able to raise debt sooner, or debt versus equity is a whole question in itself. But I do think I really encourage entrepreneurs at this time. It's a wonderful time to be starting a business in terms of great values-based investors looking for deal flow. Having said that, it's so important that you really align your financial model and the financial expectations with the investors that are right for the company. And with all the success we've had, I've been turned down, I don't even know how many times, from investors who are looking for a quick turn. They're looking to invest and exit within a couple years, or more, traditionally technology based. They're not really food based investors. And so the cycle of investment is shorter. The expectations are different. And I think what you find when you communicate that financial journey properly, you end up matching yourself to the right type of investor, because expectations are aligned around return, around investment cycle, all of those things. So it's been a great learning process for me, and it's one of the areas of the market that has just changed drastically since Revolution Foods started. So, and in terms of a percentage of my time, Will, you asked, because we have grown so quickly, so these have been great opportunistic rounds that we've raised to really fund growth and expansion and impact. I'm always fundraising, and that's one of the things I will tell everybody on this call. There are so many cases where I've met an investor, the timing hasn't been right for them, but they've loved the idea, they've loved the team, they've said, come back to me because I can see myself investing in this later. 9 times out of 10, that actually happens. So the other thing is, don't get down if you feel like you've got this great connection, but it's not the right timing, because chances are if you, keep growing and you keep the communication strong with that investor, you'll be able to bring them in the next round. So I probably spend a quarter of my time managing the capital needs and sort of the board management capital needs of the business.
So, you talked about aligning values and with the mission. You mentioned that food can take a while. Food can take a while to mature. Doesn't necessarily have the kind of hockey stick growth that, let's say, a digital company might. So, I think people who are probably a little more patient and certainly care about the mission. Those are the key things. But let's just be clear, you're a for-profit business, and you intend to deliver a very strong return on the invested capital in the business. Competitive.
Absolutely.
Better than market.
Absolutely. Right? And the good news is, I typically get asked these questions when I speak around, do you feel that conflict between profit margin and mission? And the truth is, very rarely, because the decision that we made around the values that we've embraced on food quality, on brand, on employee treatment, all of these things have actually led us to create a brand of value in the market. There is no doubt that there is a halo and just a positive valuation impact for companies that have built an authentic brand, that are connecting with consumers in an authentic way. And I see that time and time again. So I like to say around here, our values have created our value. And I truly believe that. And I see that time and time again. So there's not a lot of compromise in the way you need to run a values-based business if you're being thoughtful about managing the finances properly.
Many times, an investor will also join your board of directors. Can you talk a little bit about how you've built your board and the kind of expertise that you have around the table and how you've kind of shaped it as you've grown? Because that's another interesting facet of keeping alignment between the company's vision and values, the
Yeah.
capital, and the board, whom you really report to as the CEO.
Yep. Exactly. Building the board and building the team have been, by far one of the most amazing parts of the journey, and one that I'm most proud of. I think because it is. I mean, your team is everything, and I think of my team. I think of my board as my team. So we have a very active board. We have a board that is, rolls up their sleeves and contributes wherever they can, which is also a function of my leadership and reaching out to them and saying, here's what I need in order to push the company forward, and here's where you can contribute. I think, as you think about building a board, I always look for the areas that specific individuals can contribute in. I think for us, we've needed clear expertise in the education sector to help us understand, to your question, Will, how to break into larger public school districts, how to sell into these systems, how to think about what schools value, how to think about the impact we're having. And then there is the food side of what we're doing, which you've been a tremendous mentor for us on that front, which is running and scaling a food business. And that's everything from, the marketing and branding side all the way back to the quality assurance, food safety, facility structure, all of those things. So if you look at our board, we have a real operating executive in the food and logistics world. We have certainly Will, having been an entrepreneur and worked in growing branded products and CPG successfully and building incredible marketing strategies and brand strategies behind those brands. We have Arnie Duncan on our board, who's an education expert. I do have I have a little bit of a bias in working with investors with operating backgrounds. I think it gives them some real empathy and some real ability to help you when you're kind of working through some of your toughest times. Building, transitioning team, recruiting team, building your org chart. For us, with a company of 2,000 people, that's been by far one of the most exciting but challenging pieces of the equation. So really looking for folks with that independent expertise who can help you company build.
I know one of the things that the board is most proud of is that Revolution Foods has created an enormous number of jobs and has been really honored and singled out for that on the national stage, with receiving some really important, recognition. Can you just talk a little about that? Because that's not only are you impacting the health and well-being of children, you're also, by using the kinds of foods that you do and by purchasing them in the way you do, you're having a impact on sort of sustainability, climate, the health of the planet, let's say. And then the third area of impact is just this enormous kind of job creation, particularly in communities where opportunities may be limited. And talk about how you've thought about amplifying that kind of impact in the business too, and the kinds of decisions you had to make.
Yeah, I think in terms of the just to stop for 1 second on the job creation. I mean, it's been again, I'll just keep talking about team as long as you allow me to talk about it, because it is so important how you build your team and how you as an entrepreneur, you complement your expertise. But, even more importantly, or as importantly, is the culture you're building with your team. And for us from day one, we knew that we wanted to locate in the communities we were serving. We wanted to create jobs with parents, family members, community members in the schools we were serving. We were in a position to do that, which was great in terms of creating jobs around production, driving, being chefs, dishwashing, you name it. We have just an incredible kind of heart of the house job creation engine at Revolution Foods. So we've always found that if you're recruiting people who are connected to the work you're doing, It's going to make your product better. Your retention is going to be better. Your financial results are going to be better. It benefits the company all the way around. So I think, in our case, we're proud to have been named twice in a row the second fastest second fastest growing inner city job creator in the nation. And it's not just something to be proud of on a plaque on the wall. It's truly impacted our results. And kudos to our board and our investors. We've also always been committed to giving equity to everyone in the company. Similar theory that if people have, everybody's got to pay the rent and take care of their kids, and it's incredibly important to have that salary first and foremost. But we also believe that every single member of the team, from the CEO to the production chef, to the dishwasher, to the account manager, everyone deserves some skin in the game in terms of building this company. So we've tried to, Will, when we've made these decisions, really make them in a full circle decision-making model.
That's just a wonderful way that you illustrate how you operationalize the values of the business. Another thing I love about the board meetings is that you always start each meeting with a salute to the impact that you're having. You always take time, even in the most pressing moments when you're going to run out of time. You highlight that great school story that underscores the impact that you're having. I just love that practice.
We do. And, at the end of the day, we believe that we have a systems changing company. And so, this is when we think about 100 years from now and we look back on what we've created, we want to make sure that that legacy of really changing the system in a broader way for the communities we serve is alive and well. And I want to make sure that everyone is connected to that heart and culture when they walk into a board meeting. And it's also an incredibly, I'll always kind of go back and forth on how the mission really translates into a business advantage. So, when we're out there recruiting, the number of just unbelievably talented leaders who've decided, and board members who've decided to dedicate their time to Revolution Foods because they want that next chapter of legacy and impact building. And they want to take all their great skills and all their amazing heart and passion and kind of expertise and bring it to, a mission that they can really look back and be proud of. And I think we've been able to really I always say kind of punch above our weight with recruiting in certain ways, which has benefited us tremendously and has benefited certainly our executive team tremendously. So that mission, it just permeates through everything you're doing every single day.
Well, this has just been so fun. You are such an inspiration, and I really appreciate how you helped us understand how a mission-driven company really manifests those values in action and operation every day through the team, through the capital, through the customers, the board, the product, everything. It's just all integrated. And I think there's so much more to talk about, but I think what I'll do is I'll invite Kirsten and Sangeeta to come back in a couple of months when we do maybe our April or May session and talk about the newest chapter of Revolution Foods, our new line of supermarket distributed products. So,
I think that's a great idea. There's just so much to dive in on. So I know they would love that. And I'm very honored to have spent the time with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. I'm just going to, before we finish up, I just wanted to let everybody know that we have several sessions coming up in the near future. Steve Case, who is one of America's great entrepreneurs and actually is on the board of Revolution Foods. Steve was the co-founder of America Online back in the day, and is really talented and well-connected and just very smart. I mean, when you talk about how people add value to building a company, I just love his insights. And he's just written this new book, which is terrific. And he's going to be joining us at the end of this month in January. And then in February, we have Neil Grimmer, who was one of the founders of Plum Organics and has just started a new personalized nutrition company called Habit. And so he's going to talk about his experiences in being a serial entrepreneur and going from one company that he helped grow and lead that was sold to Campbell's, and then turned around and, without skipping a beat or taking a breath, decided to start another company, this one informed by technology. And then in March, I'm really delighted we have another friend who just published a book, Cheryl O'Loughlin, who is also a founder of Plum Organics and is now the CEO of Rebel, a really exciting beverage company, and the author of this book, Killing It, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Keeping Your Head Without Losing Your Heart. She'll be here in March. So keep your eyes on the Food Business School website and our Twitter feed and our Facebook for the specific dates and times of those sessions. And we'll see you then. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks.